The late 60s were a turbulent time for Brazil. At the same time as an unprecedented economic boom was bringing the country into new levels of prosperity, a military coup was beginning to subject its population to a crushing totalitarian regime. It was into this topsy-turvy cultural climate that a generation of young Brazilian artists birthed a multimedia aesthetic they named Tropicalia. Caetano Veloso's debut album exemplified the Tropicalia movement's passion for mixing media, while the title of the opening track, Tropicalia, which the movement was named after, was borrowed from a work by the boundary-defying visual artist Hélio Oiticiá. A collaborative album featuring contributions by future legends like Caetano Veloso and the group Os Mutantes, the compilation showcased the Tropicalia movement as a communal effort, with a fully fledged sound that crossed candy-colored psychedelia with serious political messages. Tom Zé was one of the principal architects of Tropicalia, and his life was emblematic of the social upheaval that inspired it. On his debut album, he mixed sophisticated lyrics with the intricate, eccentric melodies that would become his trademark. Gilberto Gil helped keep Tropicalia's hippie-inspired excursions rooted in Brazilian musical traditions. Backed by Os Mutantes, his first self-titled album found common ground between samba and the British invasion. Decades after its release, Os Mutantes' debut album would inspire a surge of interest in Tropicalia from listeners outside of Brazil, affirming how far ahead of time their trippy experiments in Baroque psychedelia really were. As a composer and arranger, Rogério Duprat held a key role in shaping Tropicalia's sound. He only made one proper album himself, but it got as far out as the style ever went. Tropicalia's most revolutionary voices frequently tangled directly with the Brazilian government. Both Caetano Veloso and Gilberto Gil were jailed for anti-government activity, and Veloso's second self-titled album is steeped in prison imagery. After their release from prison, both Veloso and Gilberto Gil went into exile in London. Before he departed, Gil recorded one of Tropicalia's most searing and ambitious sonic statements, influenced equally by Jimi Hendrix and Buckminster Fuller. Gal Costa would go on to become a major mainstream Brazilian pop star, but on this early effort, she shows how much Tropicalia crossed over with the aggressive noise happening on the fringes of the era's avant-garde. Jorge Ben's affinity for ignoring genre boundaries almost ruined his early career in bossa nova, but the Tropicalia scene gave him a new home among more broad-minded artists. His first album after joining up with the movement made him a superstar. This Rio quartet earned its stripes in the Tropicalia Revolution, backing Gal Costa and Tom Zé. On their sole proper LP, they pay tribute to the movement with roughed-up renditions of songs by Zé, Jorge Ben, and Gilberto Gil. Tropicalia's connections to psychedelic music scenes elsewhere comes through particularly strong on this self-titled release. With its plentiful fuzz guitar and Costa's atypically aggressive vocal performance, it feels like Rio's answer to Big Brother and the Holding Company. Os Mutantes were still in their early 20s when they recorded their second album, but they were already capable of handling a staggeringly wide range of musical styles. On Mutantes, they put their psychedelic mark on everything from European classical music to American country. After spending 2 albums filtering American and British rock and roll through a distinctly Brazilian lens, Os Mutantes delivered as close to a straight-up rock record as they got, albeit one that occasionally verges on satire of its source material. Cultural cannibalism was one of Tropicalia's core principles, and while Antonio Carlos and Jocafi had a hit with the relatively straightforward Você Abusou, they also pulled heavily from samba, Afro-Brazilian funk, and fuzz-drenched acid rock. Recorded near the end of his exile in London, Transa captured Veloso's interest in both Brazilian capoeira rhythms and the reggae that Jamaican communities were importing into his adopted hometown. After its release, Veloso would finally return to Brazil. Hailing from a commune in the state of Bahia, Novos Baianos blended traditional styles of Brazilian song with a folk influence filtering down from the States, resulting in a rustic counterpoint to Tropicalia's more adventurous albums. His first album after returning from exile in the UK, Gil's Expresso 2222 is a joyous homecoming celebration that delivers some of the most straightforward funk and rock compositions of his career. Although released as a solo LP by Os Mutantes' female lead, this album also represents the final work the band would record together in their original lineup. Its harder edge and darker themes reflected the changing mood that would bring Tropicalia's heyday to a close. Like many of his collaborators, Tropicalia's most eccentric instigator would go on to record for several more decades. But the subdued tone and minimalist arrangements signaled that, like so many other movements of the 60s, Tropicalia's utopian dream was drifting away.
Mas eu não sei de nada, eu não sei de